Hello, this is Dr. Schamberger, and in this brief video talk, we're going to focus on private companies. Now, this includes all kinds of private businesses, including your small businesses in your community. So the local mom and pop stores will be examples of private businesses. Private businesses also can include larger companies. For instance, Chrysler, Mars Candy, which makes M&Ms, Publix, the grocery store chain. So a number of companies make up private enterprises. Now, private companies do not have the same regulations as public companies in that private companies are not overseen by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that means they don't have to file the paperwork that public companies have to do, unless they have issued bonds to investors, which is a sign that they're getting ready to enter the public company atmosphere. But there are still ways to find out some information about private businesses. So all businesses, whether they're private or public, but all of them have to incorporate themselves in the state in which they are operating. So this can include your Secretary of State's office. Maybe there's a regulatory agency that oversees that particular private business. If so, then you can call or email that particular agency to find out more information about that private business. Now, financial information is not going to be disclosed. Just like you are a private citizen, your tax information is private. Only you and the IRS know your particular financial situation. It's the same thing here with private businesses. Their income is not going to be disclosed to the public. But the reason why contacting these agencies is important is because maybe you will learn of something going on with that business. Anything from perhaps a complaint to maybe even if there's a possibility of an expansion, maybe that agency would be aware of it. Most businesses are regulated in some way by a state agency. Federal agencies also could apply here. So some private businesses, that especially those that might be medical or healthcare related, could fall under OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Other agencies could include Federal Trade Commission, which deals more with advertising claims as well as other concerns of fraudulent activity. Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Labor Department, EPA. There's a number of federal agencies that you could contact to learn more about a specific private business. So let's talk about how private companies expand, because they do. So some private companies have solicited investors, but not in the same way that public companies do. For instance, let's say I'm operating a small at-home venture and I'm growing. Maybe I'm doing really well with the product that I'm selling. I'm realizing it's taking more and more time, so I need maybe a larger office space. Maybe I don't need to be in the home anymore, so now I need to have an office out in the community. That's going to take some money, maybe rent. Maybe I need to grow the ability to staff. Maybe it's just been me and say a family member. Well, now I need to maybe hire 2 or 3 other people to help me really grow this, but I don't have the capital or the funding to do so. So I could ask some people. I could either go to a bank. Many private businesses do it that way. I could also solicit maybe investors. Maybe I know some friends who have come into some wealth, or maybe they have some wealth that they would like to invest in. And I can make a proposal to them. Let's say I'm needing $100,000 to really get this going. Maybe I could try to find 10 people who could invest $10,000 in my private business. If they do, then they own 1/10 now of my private business. So that is how some private companies can expand, either just by going to a bank or maybe soliciting investors in that way. Now, let's say after a period of time, I'm really doing well to the point where we're talking, I need to get into the millions of dollars in order to expand more properly. Then private companies that are wanting that additional large capital can go to investment firms that are designed to invest in small operations. These are known as venture capital funding firms. So these particular firms give private businesses money. That's what they're in the business to do. And the dollar amounts invested are in the millions to expand. So many times these private businesses have existed for a few years already. Now, in return, the owners of those private businesses or companies, they're going to give that venture capital firm an ownership in their business. Now, often these venture capital firms will sit on its investment for about 5 to 7 years, and then they'll sell it to another investor, or they'll even sell its ownership stake in the company to public investors in what we call an IPO, an initial public offering. And when that occurs, as we talked about in the previous video dealing with public companies, that IPO process is now making the private businesses or the private business on the pathway to become public. Now, private businesses try to sell their businesses to investors in much the same way that public companies do when selling their stock to the public. So if you know of a private business that gets an investment from a firm, that can be a story because if they have received additional money, they're going to do something with that money. They're going to expand in some way. But expansions could mean additional jobs. Okay, so maybe that's a question to ask. Privates also can sell shares to their employees. That does happen from time to time. Whenever you want to know more about a business or businesses in your community and how certain individuals and companies really interact with one another, the Chamber of Commerce is a great place to start meeting those business people. They come from all kinds of companies, private, public, small, and large, and they're there at Chamber of Commerce events to network with one another. Many of them are already friends, but they also gather to talk about some of the things that might be going on in their particular businesses and offices. Chamber of Commerce events usually are open to the public. They want the public to know about some of the things going on. So some of the events could include ribbon cutting ceremonies. It could also include a business after hours event. Private companies far outnumber public companies in any community. I mean, think about it. Private companies, that's what this country has been founded on for more than 250 years, really since its founding. It has been the backbone of the American economy. So that's why private companies need to have more attention paid to them. Maybe not necessarily in the negative investigative way, but what they do and what they contribute to a community can make excellent business stories. So that concludes our particular talk about private businesses and how they really contribute to the U.S. economy. Thank you for your attention.